Isn't technology wonderful? You know, I've been working, like Jeff just said, I've been working with stuff for 38 years. Well, not with technology, but started off at Nebraska Public Power as actually as a drafter, doing engineering services kind of stuff. Spent a lot of time in power plants, transmission lines, distribution, and then I decided I wanted to get into IT. By the way, okay, just so I know my audience, who in here is from IT, works in an IT organization? Okay. The rest of you, I'm assuming, aren't. All right, I just want to know that, because I work in an IT organization, but I'm not an IT guy, okay? I'm a recovering computer programmer. I'm trying to learn how not to, oh, there it is, okay. And I'm going to lose this because this is, after all, a bunch of maintenance people with some IT people mixed in. So we're going to talk about technology roadmap planning. If you don't remember anything else about today, about what I said, remember this quote, because I think this sets the stage for what we're going to talk about. Remember Alice in Wonderland, when Alice came to a fork in the road, and the Cheshire Cat says, and she asks the Cheshire Cat, which road do I take? And he says, what? Where do you want to go? Alice says, I don't know. And the Cheshire Cat says, well, then it really doesn't matter, does it? If you don't remember anything else, you have to want to know, it does matter where you want to go so that you know which road to take. And that's going to be one of the things I'm going to try to focus on today. So what I'm going to cover, first and foremost, is what is a technology roadmap? Everybody has their own ideas about it, but I'm going to give you our definition at Nebraska Public Power, what we are just putting together, and more importantly, why should you care? Secondly, I want to walk us through the collaborative process that we've done to try to develop this thing. And then I want to give you, since this is very new, in fact, it is extraordinarily fresh and new. It's so fresh that I'll share that with you later. Some experiences so far and what we've learned on the road. And then, if we have time, some questions. So, first of all, a little bit about Nebraska Public Power. We're a public utility, serve most of the state of Nebraska. As you see there, a little over $1 billion revenue. We are public, which means we are owned by our ratepayers. So I always like to say, we can't legally make a profit. We have surplus revenue, no profit. 2,000 employees, 8,000 miles of transmission lines, a little over 3,000 megawatts of generation, coal, nuclear, gas, combined cycle, hydro, wind, and soon we will be the first commercially operating hydrogen-powered, about 120 megawatt unit in the world. That's sort of exciting. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, but a vertically integrated utility. And Jeff mentioned I've been involved with our SAP stuff since 1997 or 98. That's when we first started with SAP. We went live originally on October 4th, 1999, and it's been a journey ever since. So first of all, what's a technology roadmap? I'm going to give you our definition, and I think it's a good definition. It's one that seems to cover all the bases. And this is really important because, well, right now we've been dealing with trying to educate our executive team on what is it that a technology roadmap is and why is it important. So I don't have to speak to you at an 8th grade level like I do to our executive team. So you're getting the same thing here. Well, anybody hear the word roadmap? Is that a buzzword today? Yeah. I mean, I was in at Sapphire, and I got so sick of hearing roadmap from everybody. You got to have a roadmap. You got to have a roadmap. You got to have a roadmap. Okay. It's true. But what you don't need, what you don't necessarily need, is a product roadmap from SAP. Although that sure would be nice if they'd ever arrive at one. Is there anybody from SAP in here? Just checking. But given all of the changes and things that are going on in the world today, and around our businesses, around the technology, all of the kind of things that are happening, we've got to have a roadmap. And so first I'm going to explain to you what I consider a technology roadmap. It's a high-level plan for technology capabilities, hold that in mind, and initiatives for about a 5-year time frame. Anything longer than 5 years and you might as well have a crystal ball. But there's some major characteristics about it. First of all, it's business objectives driven. It's not an IT thing. Let me say that again. It's not an IT thing. It's directionally correct. By that I mean it sends you down the right path, but it's not so detailed that you can't have some flexibility as conditions change. And thirdly, it's enterprise aware. Any of you that work in, especially in utilities, know that we tend, and larger utilities that are vertically integrated, know that we tend to have lots of conflicts between different lines of business. And so trying to get a nuclear group aligned with a fossil generation group, aligned with a customer services group, aligned with a distribution management group around what are the key capabilities that we need going forward is a challenge. But it has to do that. Otherwise, you might as well just have as many roadmaps as you'd have bright ideas. So what are some key components of a technology roadmap? Well, there's really three big things. One starts with business goals. What is it that your organization needs to accomplish? Now, in the context of what we're talking about here, those could be driven heavily by asset performance, asset lifecycle management. It could be driven by whatever it is that for a given part of your business says this is critical to our success. Secondly, what are the needed capabilities technology-wise to meet those goals? And then thirdly, what are the milestones that I want to put in place or that we want to lay out for ourselves to achieve and to put in place those capabilities so that we can meet those goals? So it's really fairly simple. It's not rocket science. If you would take our, and I don't have a copy of it, but if you would take our technology roadmap and take a look at it, there's no rocket science in it. But it is a very, very important document and a very important program for putting things in place. And I hope as I go through this, you'll see why. A technology roadmap is mainly focused on the what, not the how. And that's important because the first thing that we usually want to focus on is, I need a project to go implement, name your favorite SAP component. Okay, HANA. There, I said it. There, all you SAP guys should be happy now. I said HANA. Okay. But that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on, okay, we're not doing product selection 5 years ahead. We're doing focusing on what are the capabilities that you've got to have business to be able to meet your goals. We'll deal with the specifics of the the how later. How are we going to do that? How's that going to blend in with the whole architecture and all those kind of things? So a technology roadmap is not, and this is one of the things that we've had to keep saying over and over again. By the way, if you were in here for Scott Mitchell's last session on organizational change management, that's kind of what I've been living, is trying to reinforce some of these kind of things. A technology roadmap is not a detailed list of IT projects. And this is one of the things that we keep saying is that I help lead the projects practice in our IT organization. And it's like, this is not the sum total of everything we're going to be doing for the next 5 years. So it's not just a detailed list of everything that, and there's been a few business leaders that thought that's what it should be. That it should be this telling IT what we want them to do. No, that's not really a good way to do that. It's not a wish list of technology initiatives. One of the managers at our nuclear plant, I like the way he said this. He talked about the good idea ferry that seems to float in every night and run around to everybody's desk and drop off good ideas. And of course, they all come back to IT to say, hey, we all had good ideas. There's tons of good ideas, but you can't do them all. So that's not what it is, a wish list of technology, good ideas. It's also not a paved in concrete, unchangeable plan. It has to be flexible because we do not live in a static world, do we? Technology is not static. Our businesses aren't static. And so it's got to be something that's got some flexibility to it. I'm going to just briefly hit a few of these. I took these as excerpts out of our actual roadmap document because I laid out purpose statements and principle statements. So here's the purpose, though, is a visible shared view of future technology capabilities that everybody, and I mean everybody, from the CEO down to the guy that's turning the wrench, can take a look at and go, I know where we're going. I understand what's important now. So from a business standpoint, if there are plans for implementing some new business transformation things that affect technology, those are agreed on as far as when those might happen. From an IT standpoint, and this is something we're dealing with a lot right now, is there's a lot of us that have been there a long time, 38 years for me, and I'm not the longest one there. And there's a lot of almost ready to walk out the door. We've got to start planning for what are the skills that we need in the future. Well, I can tell you, I can guarantee you, it's not going to be FICO configuration and ABAP. It's going to be a whole nother set of skills. And so we've got to know down the road where we're going so we can start planning for that. It gives us a means to identify, and that's the first thing, to rank, that's the second thing, and then prioritize strategic technology needs before those bright ideas that happen because the CEO went to a conference and heard something, before they get all the way down the road to now we just have to deal with it. And really provide a plan to evaluate other bright ideas, other emergent technology initiatives against. We're actually starting to do that right now as new bright ideas come up and we go, you know, that doesn't fit, but it's going to fit in 2 years when we look at this particular set of capabilities. So those are really the purpose of it. Some principles. Well, one of the things is that things that get put into the roadmap, things that are roadmap initiatives, they're assumed to have sufficient value versus cost. I mean, we haven't gone through a detailed, value proposition, business case, things like that. Those will be verified later as the specific initiatives get launched. But pretty much they're things that everybody agrees that, yes, this is something we need to do and there is sufficient value to even look at it. I said that other one before, that it's not the sum total of everything that we're going to do technology-wise. One of the things that was very important for us is blending technology projects out of the roadmap into the existing processes for economic value analysis, for budgeting, funding, authorization, project management, so that we're not bypassing any of that. We're not creating a whole new process for those kind of things. And the other thing is that the roadmap is, and I'm going to say this multiple times, is not a project, it's a program. We're setting it up to go through an annual review, an annual update to validate that, okay, business conditions change. Yeah, they probably have. Priorities have changed. New capabilities are available. And so it's an ongoing thing. And so you're really hearing about our first iteration of this right now. So that's what a roadmap is. Why should you care? Why does every business, I don't care what business you're in, need a roadmap? Well, every business, especially asset-intensive industries, as everybody here is related to, have lots of challenges. Is your business environment changing? Do you have more competition? How many of you are dealing with a lot of regulatory stuff? If anybody's in the utility industry, scary word is FERC and NERC and those kind of things, yeah, which add nothing to the bottom line, but they take away from the top line. So we've got to deal with all that kind of stuff. It's not, what we did 5 years ago is not good enough anymore. The changing technology environment, you've been hearing about that all day today, you'll hear about it tomorrow. IoT, digitization, consumerization, and other, choose your buzzword. They're all affecting us though. And we have to be able to deal with that. The convergence of IT and OT, this is something, especially in the utility industry, that we deal with all the time. And I'm going to say we're not dealing with it all that well. I'm in the middle of a project right now that is directly doing that, a smart grid project. But what it's dealing with is breaking down silos between operations and IT. We've got to have some common ground to be able to deal with that. So that's why a roadmap helps with those kind of things. We all need to be able to be innovative. I know for utility, that's kind of an oxymoron, an innovative utility. But we're getting called on more and more to innovate while reducing costs, adding value. So we've got to have a shared set of this is where we're going understandings. We need to plan for, I mentioned this earlier, the technology-enabled workforce of tomorrow starting today. So here's my key point though. Every business has a technology roadmap. Right? It's like every business has a strategy. It may not be written down, but you have one. So the point is, it may be documented, it may not be. If it's not documented, you simply discover it turn by turn. It's kind of like, that's why I put the recalculating GPS up there, because that's what GPSs do. As you discover your route and don't have a GPS to follow, it just kind of says, where are you going, where are you going? That's really what goes on. And that's where we've been. And so that's why this is kind of, it's boring, but it's exciting, okay? I hope you guys get excited. And I'm certainly glad I'm not doing this right after lunch, so I'm glad Scott was in between that. Oops, okay. So, from that first part, what are some key points to take home? Every business needs a technology roadmap. Repeat after me. Every business needs, you guys don't follow instructions all that well, do you? Okay. Okay. We'll work on that. A roadmap is not an IT thing, it's a business thing. But it's not done without IT's involvement because it's a joint effort. By not having a formal roadmap, you're just making up the directions as you go. And again, as I said, technology roadmap planning isn't a project, it's an ongoing program. And that's really going to be a success measure is if we make it an ongoing program. So let me talk about how we've got into this whole thing. We really sort of stumbled on it starting up about a year ago. We've had lots and lots of attempts at this over the years. I mean, I've been around there a long time, so I've been part of almost all of them. But here's the problem with them. They were either very technology-driven, focused on the details, or they were simply, I put this in the budget, the business unit says, and so there it is. We just go do it, right? With no collaboration between them. We had lots of groups with acronyms. We had the technology architecture plan. We had the strategic technology plan. We had, I lost track of all the other acronyms, but none of them ever had any real teeth behind it, any buy-in, any follow-through. Now, about 2 years ago, we tapped into a management group, a middle management group that's part of the district, and took a subset of them to be the technology subcommittee of the Management Planning Council, they're called, to essentially keep us from doing dumb things, keep business from doing dumb things by saying, I want to go buy this piece of software. Yeah, I know SAP will do it. I know this doesn't fit our architecture, but I just want to do it anyway. So we engaged this group to reactively screen those things out and say no. And in fact, really what they were doing was helping us as IT not be the bad guys to say that's not really a very smart thing to do. But the problem with that is it was always reactive. It wasn't laying any groundwork. It was simply fending off things that were coming out of the business. And in some cases, they were legitimate things, but their solution to it wasn't necessarily the right one. So what was the result? No clear path forward. We had a road we were going down, but it was foggy. No clear path forward for IT, but no clear path forward for the business units. And so we had a lot of chaos, quite honestly. Opportunity knocked. Back in 2013, our CEO, who's a very change-adaptive kind of guy and sort of an innovator, recognized that we need to focus on continuous improvement. And so he went out and found a continuous improvement manager to bring those in, put it at just below the sea level. And this guy, who I tried to get to come with me and present with this, but he was too busy doing Six Sigma stuff. But his main focus areas were developing that CI culture. Secondly, building a business process management model for the company. And then thirdly, spinning off Six Sigma-based and lean improvement projects. Well, he came to the CEO or the CIO and me as the architect and said, hey, almost every one of these things that we're going to spin off are going to have some level of IT involvement. So I need to partner with you guys. And we said, yes, you do. And in fact, instead of just reacting to stuff that comes up out of your Six Sigma efforts, why don't we partner and why don't we collaborate to come up with a roadmap process? And so that's where the whole thing started. And of course, he was all over that. Six Sigma guys are all about that kind of stuff. And so there's our overall process. Now, I'm not going to go into all of those pieces. I'm just going to focus on the red there, the roadmap planning process, because out of that comes a roadmap, which then goes into a projects portfolio where things are vetted out, and then finally into projects executed and implemented. Also down here, you'll notice at the bottom, there's other stuff that comes up that we want to be able to say, okay, is this something that's a transformational enablement initiative? If so, we want to push it into the roadmap and see does it fit there. If it's not, it's just a just do it if the business case is there. So we want to be able to segment those things out. But what I'm going to focus on in the rest of this is what's inside that red box there. With the inputs, like I talked about SBOs, best practices, current state, future state. So it really comes up with what is that roadmap. So I'm going to walk you through a 6-step process to recovery here, is kind of what I've laid it out. So the first step is, what's the current state? And I'm going to start with what it says at the bottom there. When you take off on a trip, it's kind of important, if you're planning a trip, to know where you're at, right? Where am I starting from? So that's one thing. Secondly, you want to know, well, what kind of roads am I going to travel down? Am I going to try to avoid freeways or toll roads? Do I want to take, the road less taken and get a scenic route? And then finally, I probably want to check out the condition of my vehicle. Is it going to get me there? Well, that's really the things that we focused on in current state. First of all, a current state systems model. We cataloged current business and operations systems. We mapped each one, and this was a very interesting exercise, mapped each one to the core business processes of the company that they either support or enable. And that came out of the business process management model. Very useful tool. Secondly, we did a current state technology architecture assessment. So we looked at our existing architecture from just a purely, what are all the parts and pieces we have? And we already had in place some, what I'd call architecture directional principles that had pretty much been bought off on. And so that fed right into that. And then we also did a SWOT assessment from a technology standpoint, current systems, data, practices, processes, and the organization. So those are really the 3 big things to tell you, where am I? What kind of a trip am I ready to take, which is the architecture, and what's the condition of my vehicle? How am I ready to start traveling, which is the last one, the SWOT assessment. And I want to share a couple of these with you here. The top one here is the alignment between our strategic business objectives and our core business process. That's that business process model. So that really told us, where do we focus from a business standpoint? I mentioned our directional principles around architecture. Those were already there. That was something that was already in place. This diagram here is really interesting, and I want to give you a second to talk about that. This is our alignment between existing technology assets and our core business processes. Now, you notice the top one, systems operations management, is a little over half of our technology assets. In an operations-focused organization like a utility, you would expect that, right? And next thing down is, the next group is customer relationship management. We deal with delivering services at retail, so that's one of the things we want is customer sat. But the interesting thing is look at this green box, which is other NA or TBD. What we found is we had probably somewhere around 20% of our technology assets that we could not directly tie back to a strategic business objective or a strategic process, a core business process. That was an interesting observation. Not that those systems aren't important, but we can't really say from a line of sight between that system to accomplishing our core mission, why is it there? You want to talk about making some people uncomfortable, that did. So that's why this is kind of useful. And then that's the SWOT analysis. And it's interesting, we came up with our own strength, weakness, opportunities, threats from the CIO, myself, the CI guy. But then we put it in front of these teams that I'm going to talk about in a second and let them fill stuff in and get some of their perspective and validate it. That's what's in the yellow. That was very informative for us. It added a lot of understanding of where people see we are from the business standpoint. So that was a great exercise going through that because it really confirmed an awful lot of things about and brought out some surprises that we didn't really expect. So that was step 1. Step 2, strategic planning workshop. This, I'm going to say, as it says in the middle there, is the most important activity in the process because it's a facilitated, structured workshop with business participants. And the focus is really do the ideation process and then the ranking and the consolidation and the prioritization of these needed business or needed technology capabilities. I got 2 success factors there, critical success factors. 1, select the right team members. We did not go into this saying, hey, generation, we need some people for this. Hey, nuclear, we need some people for this, because what do you usually get when you do that? People who don't have anything else to do. Or, hey, I've got this guy and he really is good with Excel, so I'm going to send him to do your strategic planning. No. So we were very careful about selecting those people and rejecting some of them and making sure that we got people who are innovators, change agents, just as Scott talked about earlier, that understand the current challenges, understand technology, but they're not geeks, and they're opinion leaders so that they can bring stuff back to their business and their colleagues and say, hey, they really listened to us and this is really what we're going to go do. So that's the one thing, is get the right team members. Secondly, make sure they know why they're coming. And we went through lots of iterations of communication prior to this workshop, some of the things that I'm going over now, and make sure that they're prepared for this, because this was a big event. In fact, we viewed this strategic planning workshop, this full day with about 50 people in a series of rooms, as really something kind of historic at NPPD, because we'd never done anything quite like it before that anybody could remember. So how do we approach it? Well, we had to break down by different business units, because obviously different business areas have different drivers. So we broke it down into 3 large groups, or small groups. I'm sorry, I'm not reading my notes. Small groups from each area. We had, actually, it was more like the groups were about 8 to, one of them was almost 20 people, which was too big. But it still came out pretty good. So we had energy supply and generation, including the nuclear group. So anybody that has anything to do with making electrons was in that group. We had the system operations, T&D, retail, and customer services. So anybody that was involved with the energy delivery and supporting directly the customers were in that side. And then support services, which is everything else, HR, you name it. Each group had an assigned facilitator. So we went through a whole structured process which was really one of the values of having this Six Sigma guy come in, is because he brought a process. And we got everybody to buy in and say, I'm going to follow the process, I'm going to follow the data, I'm not going to just try to outshout somebody, because the process we used, this brainstorming, multi-voting, affinity analysis techniques, did not really give anybody the ability to do that. It was really kind of fun to watch those people that like to shout get kind of shut down. But this is the key question that we had them focus on. What technology capabilities are needed in your business area to drive operational performance and achieve strategic business objectives? And so, again, the capabilities. What do you need to be able to do? Not what piece of software do you need, not name anything like that, but what do you need to be able to do? Some examples, and you'll see, like, I need to have the ability to have self-service analytics around this kind of data. Okay? That's a what. We'll focus on the how later, but that's a good what. That's a capability. In fact, here is a couple of the example affinity diagrams. That one there with all of the columns, that was the big wires and customer service group. They went crazy. But they did a great job. And they came up with a whole lot of stuff, all of which rolled up under a series of capabilities. They're all kind of the same things. Bottom line is we came out of it with 19 needed technology capabilities, 11 of which were really high enough ranking to say we've got to include those in this 5-year plan, this first iteration. But we're not losing any of that stuff, because that'll come back later. Then we did this. We went to each of those major business units and we said, okay, as we look at these capabilities, which ones match, which ones have affinity across all of the different business units. So you look at the top one there, data integration and data management, data self-service. It was seen as critical to all 3 of those business areas, which gives us a higher rank. Okay, that's something that we need to focus on. As you go a little farther down, you see not so much. Customer service or customer self-service, generation doesn't care about that. Support services doesn't care about that. The customer service organization very much does. And so this led us to sort things out so we could have a focus. Now, as it says there too, this is the main deliverable from the strategic planning workshop, because this is the beginnings of the real roadmap here. Now, step 3, seeding. Because you're going to bring in a bunch of people like this, and they're going to be very focused on their business needs, and they should be. But you're going to have people like the CIO, the continuous improvement manager, myself as an architect, that are going to look and go, there's some cross-enterprise things that we really need to focus on that got left out of here. So we seeded some of those back in. And some of those included, as it says, they're sacred cows that nobody really, they're not politically correct to talk about. For example, I'm going to give you some at the bottom there. We have complete division between our retail billing and our wholesale metering and billing groups and systems. And thus shall it ever be, according to our CFO. Well, no, it shouldn't. So we put that back in here as a sacred cow that needs to be tipped over and looked at because it's costing us a lot of money. S/4HANA, that's got to fit in there somewhere. Now, nobody's going to stand up and say, from a business standpoint, we need S/4HANA. But it's in our roadmap. And we put it in there as business transformation, at least to raise the visibility and get us to start thinking about it. And then there's some other things like, for example, enterprise content management, which we do not do very well today. And it's an enterprise-wide enabling capability that, again, nobody's going to ask for, but we need to raise the visibility of it and put it on the roadmap so that it can be assessed against all these other things. So that was an important part too there. Step 4, put it all together and make the roadmap. That is basically, in a nutshell right there, our roadmap. Now, it's a lot more than a Gantt chart, but really it's just taking the rank dependencies, all of those capabilities, and laying them out over the period that we're planning for, an iterative process with that management stakeholder team to come up with, these are the milestone years, and that's as far as we got, was milestone years. We don't want to go any farther than that, to say this is where we're going to look at, vet out, and launch projects to implement these capabilities. And we went through quite a few iterations of, well, I think this is more important than that, or that one we're probably not going to be ready for. And so we collaboratively came out of that. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it's 2018 or 2019. What matters is we know what it is, we know relative importance, and everybody's looking at it and saying, yeah, we're going to address this. So that really there became the core of the roadmap based on all of that other stuff that came together. Step 5, stamp approved. So we did multiple reviews and adjustments by that management stakeholder group. This is interesting. Our executive team, if I would do anything different, I just had this discussion last week with our CIO, we would have brought our executive team along a little more than we did because we were going great guns with the middle management. The executive team kind of got left behind. And so when we took it up to them to say, hey, you guys need to look at this and understand what it is, we need your blessing before we start launching projects. And we found that there was a organizational change management gap there. And talk about just in time, because the final review of the technology roadmap with our executive team happened this morning. And about an hour and a half ago, I got a text from my CIO that says, approved, as is, no changes, no anything else like. So the process works. Everybody say yay. So that's where we're at now. So we've got that done. We're going to have to do a full communication blitz to make sure everybody knows what this is and all those kind of things. And so then we declare victory and we put it in a binder and we put it on the shelf and we're done, right? No, you got one more thing to do. You're not done yet. There's step 6. And that is charter the first initiatives. This is really where we're at now. Because the purpose of roadmap is to get somewhere, right? It's not just to have something to admire. I mean, I've done enough of that in my career. I don't really want to do it anymore. Now, here's where it gets hard, is this transition from all of this conceptual planning to actual initiative startup. It starts to get real, starts to get tangible. We selected the top initiatives that were slotted for the first, oh, the clock just came on. Well, first couple of years of the plan, and we're chartering those, and interestingly, they are about in analytics, which is a great, we've never been really good at that. And so that tells me that we tapped into the right stuff from the business. So key points to take home. Planning's got to be approached as a collaborative process, not business versus IT. So focus on those strategic business objectives collaboratively. Don't get trapped in that, we can't do that, it'll cost too much, death spiral, because I've been there, done that, I've heard some of that. Focus on the value, not just the cost. Use the roadmap to surface sacred cows that need to be tipped over. By the way, that's something we do in Nebraska. We tip cows. Anybody? If you watch The Big Bang Theory, Penny does that. She's from Nebraska. Anyway, focus on the strategic needs. And finally, finish planning by launching at least one initiative. It can't just be an academic, abstract exercise. Focus on the momentum. If you got momentum, carry it forward. So let me just real quickly, is this correct? Is it like 3 minutes left?
I have like 1 minute. 1 minute.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to go really fast. So, stories from the road. What have we learned on the road? It's hard. It sounds simple, isn't it? Overcoming that inertia to get this moving and getting the business stakeholders to see the value is hard. That's why it's taken us mostly a year to get to this point. Integrate with the existing processes for financial planning and budgeting. And ideally, TRM is going to drive budgets, but it doesn't now. Engaging the right team members, I already mentioned that. We've got a lot of interest in this, all the way from, like I said, the CEO, all the way down to rank and file people. They're like excited about this. So how do we know that we've been successful? We're going to complete the first initiative that we're launching now around analytics, which we hope to have completed by mid-year. And we're actually going to go through and do a update of the TRM next year. So, okay, I've already talked about that kind of stuff. Launching the first initiative, we're cautiously optimistic. So here's what I would say to you. Conclusion, fire up your GPS, map your destination, hit the road. Don't be afraid to do this. I think it sounds very simple, but it's very, very useful. And with that, I don't think I have time for any questions.
No, Phil will be in Speaker's Corner if you guys have any questions for him. Next session starts in 5 minutes. Let's give it up for Phil.
Thanks, everybody.